Greetings, Gilliam the Rogue here, back once again with a Summerset explanation video. So again, this is going to be very much like the other ones where I kind of go through briefly everything that I can remember of what we playtested at Zenimax Online Studios. This is pre-PTS, so this is early access, beta-ish, whatever you want to call it. So this is all subject to change. I'm going based off of memory, so I might misspeak. And nothing is guaranteed to reach it to PTS or from PTS to live servers. So keep that in mind. Take this with a grain of salt. But today we're going to start talking about the class balance changes. And we're first going to be starting with Warden, because this is the class that I feel like missed out most with this patch. Wardens, in my opinion, have been in need of a heavy rework since they launched. They had a very hard time fitting into the endgame PvE scene from almost every application other than tanks and healers, but they still felt outshined in terms of competitive performance, which overall led them to be kind of neglected by the player base. Being a pay-gated class, people were like, I'm not going to play this unless it's going to be better than my Dragonite tank or my Templar healer or my anything else DPS, and it didn't really shatter anything in terms of that, in terms of PvE. Now, I'm not saying that they're a bad class, that they are complete garbage, that they can't be played. They are totally viable in every aspect. It's just that many players usually want to take something and play it because it's pushing them to new heights. They want to feel really strong, and with a class that doesn't necessarily boast to be the best at anything, rather to be really good at everything in general, like a jack of all trades, master of none, then people kind of sway away from it unless it's from a PvP application where Wardens do really well generally in terms of stamina, tanks even, healers sometimes in terms of group utility, and Magica Wardens, although we've seen a little bit of pullback from that category over the past few patches. And unfortunately, we're going to be seeing more of that with this patch, because the biggest changes that are going to be happening are Shimmering Shield will now cost more Magica. So the Magica that it restores for successfully absorbing up to 3 projectiles will not any longer be a net gain. You can no longer gain Magica back from this unless you stack a lot of cost reduction, which is going to be inefficient unless you are a healer or tank or support role. So this is going to hurt mainly the Stamina and Magica Warden from a damage dealing perspective, mainly in PvP and in some instances of PvE where they were able to use it, but it's mainly a PvP nerf, which is great because the skill is overloaded. It is the only source of on-demand major heroism. It has no cooldown. It shrugs off a huge amount of range damage, and it gives you Magica back. So seeing that nerfed was good, but I don't think that this was a healthy nerf. I believe that there should have been a cooldown on major heroism or something instead, because in a game based on ultimates, having an absurd and highest amount of ultimate generation associated with you just for taking damage and not really thinking about it is pretty out of control. When you look at the other sources of major heroism, there is a random chance to gain it from the Daedric Trickery set, which has a long cooldown and you don't control it. And the only other way to get it is going incredibly low health, 20% health, and having 120 points, and it has a 20-second cooldown. So it's a huge risk, and it can't be spammed. So seeing that come to an easy on-demand, not reflect, but an absorption, it works very much like Absorb Magic from the Sword and Board skill line. It was like, okay, this is really weird. So this nerf is going to hurt it, but it's not going to really change too much, mainly just hurting the Stamina Warden in particular, because they're not going to be able to keep it up forever. They're going to have to think a little bit more about when they put it on, but again, it's just, am I taking range damage? Put on this damage shield. So not very happy with that, but it was an ability that needed to be nerfed. The other ability that got nerfed was Scorch. So the two morphs both got nerfed or reworked. So Subterranean Assault, the stamina morph that used to give Major Fracture and Breach for 10 seconds, now only gives Major Fracture for 5 seconds. So this was a nerf. They said that it was too strong, mainly in PvP. It was enabling too much. It wasn't even something you had to consistently land. So they brought down the cooldown, or the duration, so you have to constantly be using it if you want to keep up that buff, which makes sense. You should reward the Warden for using that skill. I'm not really happy with how it's performing in general. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then they gave Deep Fissure, the Magigamorph Major Breach, but they took away its stun. So the only on-demand stun the class has is now gone. The only other stun they have is an ultimate Permafrost, so it's not on demand, so it's going to really hurt the class from a utility PvP standpoint and a Magicka damage dealer standpoint in PvE. Not going to change anything in PvE. In fact, it will help solo Magicka Wardens in PvE. So, unfortunate, because the Magicka Warden has been getting a lot of nerfs lately. We saw the nerf with birds are now dodgeable, which was a good change, but they didn't get anything back in return. It's still really slow animation. Hopefully that gets sped up. And then now we're getting Deep Fissure, their really strong stun ability, getting that loss. So that sucks, but hopefully we see some stuff on the PTS. In general, I'm very unhappy with how Scorch works. It is a very one-dimensional, too much power focused into the skill. Without this skill, a Warden feels useless almost, or non-existent, because this is a huge source of their damage dealing function. Granted, tanks and healers don't need to worry about this, but in terms of a damage dealer from PvE and PvP, this is a very important part of your combo. It does a huge amount of damage, but it's very hard to manage. It's a 3-second duration pretty much, and with the global cooldown system, that means you can use 2 abilities before you need to recast it. So it's an incredibly hard to manage and weave and maintain ability, and it's a primary bulk of your damage. So if you're not using it, it's like, why am I playing this class sort of thing. So that getting nerfed is really unfortunate, and not getting anything back really sucks as well. So my main concern with Wardens in general is the fact that they don't have many powerful abilities that can make up from it from a damage standpoint. They have a lot of utility, they have a lot of healing, and they have a lot of great abilities, but they don't have many options for damage dealing. They have one morph of a magic-only AoE frost damage, which is frost damage, not very good. Their damaging ultimate, Northern Storm, does less than Destro ultimate, more of a passive slot. Their bear ultimate is pure single target. He's a pet, he's derpy, he can die. So they don't have a lot of great options in terms of what they can do with damage dealing. They have very little for stamina. All they have are Cutting Dive, which doesn't gain any unique morph options. It's just a stamina ranged ability. Very telegraphed, easy to dodge from PvP. Feels bad to use in PvE from a clunky standpoint, and then Subterranean Assault or Deep Fissure, and then Magicka has Fracture Infection and that Magicka AoE, Winter's Revenge. So they don't have a lot of damage options, and seeing them get their primary form of damage be nerfed from a utility standpoint and not get anything back from it really sucks. So I hope that the class in general gets a lot of love in terms of getting more abilities, having them feel more impactful from a damage dealing standpoint, take away from the one-dimensional combo of I load up my Sub-Assault, I line up a heavy attack or another really strong ability, and an ultimate, and I just flatline someone, or I miss it and I do no damage. It's very much like the Magicka Sork brought to new heights in terms of one-dimensional. You land your combo, you get a kill, or you don't. And the Stamina and Magicka Warden very much feel like that, and they don't have a lot of diversity in terms of building in terms of damage or getting that killing blow. So I would really love to see something come to that. Now, they did get some other buffs. Their Grasping Vines morph, one of them, I believe the one that pulls to you now gives ultimate instantly to either the person you cast it on or the Warden. And it only happens if you heal them under 60% health. So it's a really strong utility tool, a lot of ultimate. We see Wardens are generally the best ultimate generators in the game, granted they need a few sets, they need minor heroism, but they have access to major heroism. They have a lot of ulti with their Secluded Grove, the one that gives ultimate back for healing low health targets anyways. So that's kind of a theme, is like the Warden saves someone from the brink of death, and you get this really nice reward of ultimate generation, which is a huge PvP and even PvE combat utility of like your most important ability most of the time, mainly in PvP, is an ultimate. In PvE, it really kind of amplifies or augments your playstyle. So that's really cool. That does help, again, the Magicka or tank, healer, Warden, whatever, tank, healer, and like Magicka utility Warden. So that's cool to see, but again, they already have a lot of that, so I don't really understand what the purpose of that was. The main issue they lack in is in damage production from a non-one-dimensional standpoint. So, again, that's my opinion. I could have misspoken during this. I'm probably missing a bunch, but I'm really hoping that the Warden gets some more bigger changes to the class in terms of balance and whatnot, because they definitely deserve it. It's been a year since their launch, and they've kind of cemented themselves to be the jack of all trades, master of none from PvE, and then kind of being like this one-dimensional, toxic, really hard to balance PvP class where they have healing, tankiness, utility, damage, burst, unavoidable mechanics, and then at the same time, if they miss that damage, they're useless. So, yeah, hard to balance, but definitely deserves to kind of stand out a little bit, mainly from a PvE standpoint, and then kind of balancing them out in PvP, giving them more options to play with and whatnot. But again, my opinion, who cares? But again, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys around.